my startup journey is that like I never went to really top schools. I didn't have a business network. I didn't I didn't come from that world. And I really had to work well with people to get to the next level.
Welcome to episode 5 of Uprise Talks, where every fortnight we talk to change makers and rule breakers who've turned their backs on the 9-to-5 and are instead pursuing more fulfilling entrepreneurial careers. Going beyond the classic PR stories of how people have built super successful companies, we want to find out why and how these remarkable people really took their first steps on the hero's journey and what advice they can give to us.
Our next guest is Brendan Rogers. He is the founder of 2AM Ventures and Talent, investing in ambitious founders from all over the world and placing 10x talent in early stage high growth startups. Previously, Brendan co-founded the mobile dog walking app WAG, which raised over $360 million in venture capital, including $300 million from SoftBank's infamous Vision Fund. Before WAG, Brendan co-founded GameChanger Labs straight out of university, which grew to over 50 million users and was acquired by IAC in 2014. He's also now a mentor for many companies, accelerators and universities, a frequent contributor to Forbes, a speaker at national conferences, and has appeared on some awesome startup podcasts like The Venture Brief, and we're now lucky enough to have him on Uprise Talks. So welcome, Brendan. That was quite a hype.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on today.
No, thank you for coming. That's a very impressive resume.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
How are you doing? Where you're in Florida, am I right?
Yes, in Florida. Came out here in late February and haven't left yet. So enjoying the sunshine, but also getting a lot of work done and adjusting to the new changes that everyone's experiencing in the world.
Yeah, it's a very crazy time, but luckily we can podcast over Zoom. Stock's gone through the roof pretty much.
I know, right? Did you see the Zoom ticker that was? So there's like two companies called Zoom, and people were investing in the wrong Zoom.
Oh my God, yeah, I did see.
And the stock just like blew up overnight.
Yeah, wow, that is one way to get lucky as a company.
Yeah.
Just I might try that technique. Just like start a company with a really similar name and just try and just ride on the back of it. Amazing. So I'm really excited because I feel like there is an awful lot that we could talk about. So I'm going to try and not keep you for like hours and hours. But yeah, I think I'm kind of keen, like from research, there's a lot about, obviously, you've built these incredibly successful companies. So I want to kind of start by going right back to the beginning when you were pretty much just leaving university and you founded GameChanger Labs straight away without going into, all the graduate jobs and 9-to-5s that most of your friends were probably going into, and kind of understand, how was that experience for you starting a company straight out of university?
Yeah, great question. So when I, towards like the last year of university, I just wasn't ready to really get into the workforce, like, the 9-to-5, sitting in a cubicle, wearing a suit. That just wasn't my vibe. And throughout university, I played soccer, and I just loved being on teams, and I loved kind of, going through the ups and downs and obviously the wins and whatnot. So I kind of really fell in love with startups, and a lot of my friends in my circle were like also very entrepreneurial and stuff like that. And decided that, it makes sense to, start a business and learn more about, technology and tech startups specifically. And it was at a time where startups were, I would say at least in America, it was more of like the cool thing to do. You had like the rise of like Facebook and these businesses that like, it was so cool to like move to California and live out of a garage and start an internet company. And it was really when like mobile apps were really starting to take off. Obviously more people were being connected to the internet. Mm-hmm. And I just, took a liking to startups and the whole concept of like you give everything you have and you are so passionate about your idea that you get to hire people around that and just really kind of try to change the world. And I just really thought that was cool. So I went after it. So yeah, those were my initial thoughts coming out of university.
That must have been quite a scary experience though. Thinking, okay, I'm just going to go out on my own. I'm young. I've got no kind of, work experience. Like, I suppose most people that go into entrepreneurship, maybe like they go to business school or, they found companies having worked at like PayPal or Facebook for the past however many years and stuff like that. And you were just like, no, I'm just going to go straight in there. That must have been quite scary, no?
It was, it was definitely scary. It's funny because like, I don't think it would have been very difficult for me to try to get into a business like Facebook or Google or stuff like that. It's very difficult to get into those businesses right out of college. I was like, so I moved from the East Coast to Palo Alto and I'd never been to California. I didn't save a bunch of money. My grandma gave me some of her tax returns she gave to her grandkids, and that really kind of kept me alive for 2 or 3 months in Palo Alto. So like, I was more actually like excited about the journey. Like I didn't have that many responsibilities at the time. And I was in this point in my life where I was young enough where I was just like, you know what, like, what do I have to lose? The last thing I want to do is like when I'm 45 looking up at the ceiling saying, I wish I did this. So I was definitely frightened in terms of like what to expect, but like, I was excited about the journey and I was excited about like this new frontier of like moving to California, going to Silicon Valley. I had, having the energy to go network and to go meet people and stuff like that. So I was definitely scared, but I also think I was, equally as excited.
Yeah. And I guess you're so right in that kind of, I guess that's the time to do it when you're young and you don't have responsibilities of, a marriage and a mortgage and kids and, all that other stuff that can complicate things a lot. But also you do have, you have sort of parents and friends and stuff. Like, what did your family and friends who were maybe doing more sort of traditional things think of what you're doing?
Yeah, so like it's funny because I actually I interned in college for a company called PepsiCo, which makes Pepsi, but they have a chip company called Frito-Lay, and I would go around delivering potato chips to all these different like gas stations and stuff like that. But once I graduated school, I actually got a job offer to like take the job, and I turned it down, and my parents were really like, like, why are you like what's the reasoning for this? And they were definitely, I think, like they were 100% supportive. Family was supportive, but I don't think I know that they thought I was going to come home after like a couple months, something like that. But they've always been very supportive. My father is a very entrepreneurial person too, but he doesn't really have he doesn't have his own business, but he does like a lot of side hustles. And I think that like just him and the motivation that he gives me, I think that he was actually also excited because he's like, I never had a chance to do this, so obviously I'm going to root for my son and stuff like that. But people were definitely like, my whole family, I didn't know anyone in California. I never moved, like I'd never been there before. I had, it was just me and my friends. So it was kind of like, it left everything. I literally went with a suitcase. That's it. So yeah, they were supportive and people around me were supportive, but I also think that they were probably like, well, we'll probably be home in a couple months.
Prove them wrong.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's interesting as well. So you've moved to California with your little suitcase and you're like, right, I'm gonna get started. What are the kind of first steps did you take? Like, how did you find your co-founders? How did you like take those first actual steps, putting one foot in front of the other to starting a business?
So my one of my co-founders I met in college, and him and his brother started a business while they were like they actually dropped out of college to start a business. So they were a couple years ahead with starting businesses and having, that entrepreneurship bug. So that I think helped because they kind of were already living that entrepreneurial journey. But yeah, so we met in university, and as we came to California, we had a couple contacts that like let us have free office space, or like not even office space, just like let us go hang out and use the internet basically. So we had some contacts, but we really were, from day one, just grind mode. I mean, I lived in it's actually really kind of like wild as I look back on it, but I moved out there and I lived in a studio with 3 other people on airbeds for about like 9 months. And it was like very, it was kind of crazy, to be honest with you. But it was like, it made like myself really want to work harder and get up every day and like really wanted to like build something. So from day one, it was really like, talk to the folks that we are connected to out there and just kind of start working. And the first business was around online dating. And online dating in 2011 specifically, there was a lot of stigma around dating. Like if you're on eHarmony or Match.com, you'd look upon, like you wouldn't tell anyone. It was weird. It was expensive. So we saw this opportunity where like, why can't everybody be like, why can't online dating be cool? And why isn't there like why is online dating only for 30-year-olds that are divorced or something like that? So that's kind of how we thought about it, and that's kind of how we started working on that business.
Mm-hmm. That's yeah, I do remember those days. I think I was at university in 2011. Yeah, I was. And it was, I remember like the first few people starting to get on like Tinder and, all of these other apps. And at first everyone was just like, that's weird. You're going to get murdered because you're going to meet a psychopath. And yeah, it's just funny how the whole thing's obviously completely changed now. Going back to something you said earlier about, why you chose to do that versus, any other kind of business idea. Something you said earlier was about, this excitement of going and building a company and kind of changing the world. Like how did you decide what kind of mission that you wanted to work on, or like what purpose your company would have?
So it was for that business, it was more so like identifying like what markets needed to be disruptive. So in that time, it was like when Uber was really taking off, Lyft was taking off, Airbnb was already like up and to the right. And we saw these businesses that were just like disrupting massive industries. So the way we thought about it was like, well, what industry can we disrupt that hasn't been disrupted yet? And that was essentially, we came to online dating. And we also saw at that time that Facebook, they opened up their API. This is when Facebook apps were really like taking off. So you had apps like Farmville.
Oh my God. Farmville was like, that is like my school days in a word.
So you had like,
what a good time.
Yeah, for sure. You have like apps like Badoo, which is a big European dating site. But these apps sat on top of Facebook, so you could really create these really engaging viral loops to get a lot of users. And this is when the API was like very less strict and whatnot on what you can and cannot do. So we built this app that sat on top of Facebook to get a bunch of users and stuff like that. But yeah, we really wanted to identify and target the online dating world. And the mission was to really like make online dating cool and not have that stigma where it's like, oh my God, you're on online dating, you're weird, or like you're gonna, something's gonna happen to you, whatever the case may be. So yeah, so fast forward in that company, we raised some money around it. And we hired some great people. And it was funny because we saw an app called Tinder come out in the United States, and that was out of LA. But I remember that I was in Las Vegas, and one of my friends that came to Las Vegas, he was telling me, he's like, "Oh, have you heard of this app Tinder?" And I was like, "No, I have no idea." And looked it up, and it was like that whole like swipe left and right functionality, which was like so cool. It was only mobile. And then I talked to my cousin about like 2 months later, and he lives in Boston, and he was like, "Have you heard of this app Tinder?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually I have." And it was something that like started to get like, a lot of virality and engagement through like young professionals in colleges. So we thought that was awesome. So what we did was we cloned Tinder, and we pivoted the business. We cloned Tinder and put it on Android because Tinder was not on Android for like a year and a half or something. So we had an opportunity to get a bunch of, users and stuff that wanted Tinder, but they didn't have an iPhone. So they came to our app. And basically that led to IAC Media, one of their subdivisions, acquiring the assets of the business.
Nice. And you're talking about kind of, hiring great people for your business, and actually your roles in both GameChanger Labs and WAG have both been, co-founder and, managing the recruitment. What is it about, building teams and recruiting that is kind of interesting to you, and why do you think it's so important?
So I think that what's interesting about building teams is that like you can really, like I love talking to people. I love meeting people. I'm one of those people that like if you meet me on the street, we'll probably have a 35-minute conversation about like the randomest stuff. And I think with recruiting is you obviously need to be able to talk to people, but I also like identifying people and looking at people's backgrounds and really, providing opportunities to people too. I really get rewarded when like I, source someone and maybe I find someone that doesn't have like the exact background, but as I talk with this individual and as more people in the business talk to this individual, and then that individual gets really excited about the opportunity, the mission and whatnot, and providing a job to someone, I think it's a really cool feeling. And I think that you get to meet a lot of people, and it just really fits my skill sets really well is recruiting and culture and people. And especially in the early days of startups, I mean, it's really hard to hire great talent. And it's really hard to retain great talent. And I think that every founder that starts a business should be focusing on, or one of the things they should be focusing on is making sure that they hire the right people and not just hire to hire, and making sure that they set a culture and start building a culture from day one that is amazing, where it's transparent, you're including everybody on the team, etc. And I just am very passionate about that. I think just recruiting in general is something that should be on every founder's top of mind, because no matter what stage you're at within a startup, you're always going to have to be always hiring amazing, great talent. And it's really hard to
do. And what were your kind of thoughts in going about and kind of creating that company culture like you talk about? Because I was talking on the last episode of our podcast about kind of company culture and like how it's very difficult to change. And it's very slow to change, and it's very difficult to kind of like meaningfully change it as well. So how can people that are maybe just starting up a business or thinking about creating a company culture, how can you get it right from the start?
Yeah, I would say like the main thing is transparency. I think that a lot of times, like you have your co-founders, and the co-founders are obviously like family, right? They're talking to each other 24/7. But as you hire the first couple people, being transparent, I think, is something that a lot of companies don't do from day one. Either they're, afraid to talk about like the losses or talk about maybe features that don't work, or maybe a funding fell through or something like that. But having that like open dialogue where like the your employees trust their managers, and then the managers, or rather the founders, really trust the employees, and it's like a two-way street. I think that's a great recipe for success with culture. And also really including everyone from day one. Like, you know, if you have software engineers and, maybe their expertise is not operations or, product, but including everybody in like all hands meetings, or like including everybody in daily scrums, whatever it is. I think having those principles from day one can really set your company up for success from a cultural perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's definitely kind of seems to be a movement towards that. I think in the past, very kind of traditional companies maybe weren't very transparent, and you can kind of get lost as a small person in a big organization. But then, as startups, your new companies, you're building it from the ground up. Like, it's a great opportunity to, like create your own culture and be transparent and create kind of amazing places to work. In terms of, I was just thinking kind of recruitment, in a way, that side of deciding who to hire, when to hire them, is a little bit, I mean, it's an investment from a company into a person, right? And it must be a kind of similar process of now you with your investor hat on, looking at who do you invest in as a founder? What kind of qualities do you think makes a good kind of entrepreneur and a good founder?
So I think that's a really great question, and a lot of people probably have a lot of different answers for that. For me, I try to look at qualities that I have and see if there's some sort of similarities. And some of probably the main few things that I look for is like, if it's say there's 2 or 3 co-founders, like, are these people, like, can they work well together? Can they communicate well together? Are they super scrappy? Are they willing to like have their current idea go to zero and get back up and do something else? And like, I'm a very big person about teams, and it really goes back to my athletic career. And my startup journey is that like, I never went to really top schools. I didn't have a business network. I didn't I didn't come from that world. And I really had to work well with people to get to the next level. So I really look at and I identify, especially at the pre-seed and seed stages, like the team, the founders, like, and how they communicate, how they work together. And then I would say, like, the second thing is like, how big is the total addressable market? Like, is the business that you're currently doing, is it something that, most people can use or benefit from? And I think that a lot of founders that try to raise capital, they don't really necessarily even need to raise any money, because their idea may not be like a venture-backed business, and that's totally okay. So those are the 2 things. So I really look at team and the total addressable market of how big can this industry be? How big is this? How big can this business be, etc.
Mm. And what kind of changes and trends have you seen with entrepreneurs and the kind of companies that are starting now over the past kind of few years?
Yeah, so I think that that's like 2 questions. So I think that like the whole coronavirus thing, it's like a whole different mindset now with like how investors and entrepreneurs are approaching their businesses. But pre-coronavirus, I would say that like, just you've had the whole rise with like mobile and mobile apps, and you've had like, the consumer apps and like early 2012, 2013. And then you had the gig economy apps that have grown, like the Wags of the world and the Ubers and whatnot. I think now that the trend that I'm seeing is like, I think there's more like SaaS, and I think business founders are really looking to start businesses that are just very heavy on a recurring revenue perspective. So like a lot of B2B SaaS, I feel like is how can we help out, other businesses? How can we help out, freelancers? How can we help out, whatever the case may be? I'm seeing those businesses come up more now. And I think that you can really solidify revenue early on, and you can actually start generating revenue early on. I think that like a lot of ideas and a lot of businesses have been tried from like a consumer standpoint. So I think that the new trend is more around B2B SaaS. And then I think that there's a lot of, especially with the coronavirus, but I think that just in general over the last like year, there's been a lot of businesses that have been exposed with like, huge burn rates. The unit economics are completely upside down. And they just don't make sense long term. And I think that a lot of investors are kind of shying away from businesses that may not show any light at the end of the tunnel from like a unit economic perspective. And I think that the world of like, let's just blitz scale and throw money at Facebook marketing and Instagram marketing, I think those days are really winding down. And now you're seeing a lot of businesses that are starting these like B2B, subscription services, whatever it is, to generate revenue from day one.
Yeah. Do you think there's kind of almost a movement away from that, like very, that kind of intense focus on just growth and, raising as much money as you can and, all of that kind of thing, to maybe a more sort of sustainable approach with companies looking at things in terms of actually, when am I going to become profitable? What kind of, maybe being more sort of purpose driven. I think more sustainable in many ways in terms of, the business model, the environment, all of those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that definitely, just grow at all costs. I think that era is pretty much winding down, like I said. And yeah, I think that understanding and having a business model that actually generates revenue, and, you don't have to go raise mega rounds, and, you may not need all that capital. And like, there's a lot of things that go with raising all that capital. And, I think like the name of the game is like really staying lean, like you don't need to hire a ton of people if it's not aligned with your product roadmap or actually providing value to the core product and moving needles from that perspective. I think that there's a lot of bloat with hiring, funding, marketing. And I think that as you're seeing that a lot of companies are leaning out from that perspective. And I think that's probably going to be the trend as we kind of go into the next quarter and into the new year.
Yeah. And in terms of also, I think from a kind of founder entrepreneur perspective as well, maybe that's kind of, do you think that's kind of going to be beneficial in terms of, managing your energy? Because like, you've built several super successful companies, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of sacrifice. And like, do you think maybe taking a more sort of sustainable approach to that is going to be better in kind of managing people's, work-life balance and, how they kind of manage their energy?
Yeah, I think that like just not like really figuring out like what's working and not working, really like go off data and try to get product market fit as fast as possible. But that just doesn't mean like just grow and have a ton of users that's sort of like your product. I'd rather have a couple users that are obsessed and love my product. And I think that having work-life balance and having that mindset is, I think a lot of things are getting slow. Like a lot of things are going to slow down. I feel like when I came to Silicon Valley, and my mindset was like, you have to work 24/7. You have to not leave the office. And you saw a bunch of other companies that had that mentality, and you definitely have to work hard. Like it is for sure the hardest thing I've ever done, but you really sacrifice. It's like, it's not a sprint. It's like a marathon, right? And like, you know, people need to have work-life balance, and they need to, not just focus 100% of their energy and time on this one thing, because that's not healthy and that's not long-term sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Do you have any kind of like, I mean, you must be pretty productive having set up so many successful companies and doing what you're doing. Like, do you have any little productivity hacks or little routines?
I would say like for me, like not really productivity hacks, but I would say for me, like one thing that drives me is just being active, and that I like to like work out and, go for runs, or I do CrossFit, stuff like that.
Nice.
But that's what I personally like. But I would say like find something that is like, that makes you, where you can just like kind of forget about your work, and you can kind of have that outlet, and it can benefit you in whatever way. And that could be from, if that's working out, if that's reading, if that's meditating, or if that's doing whatever, painting. I think that for me, I was like very much consumed with what I was doing 24/7, and I didn't have that balance. And I think that you can burn out like super quickly if you don't have either productivity hacks, or if you don't have like, some sort of outlet to really kind of recalibrate and rebalance your mind.
Yeah, definitely. I always find that like if I go for I'm like you, like I like doing like going for runs and stuff like that. It always kind of helps clear my head, and I always have like ideas when I do that as well. Like I don't know, it's something about taking yourself away from that situation that somehow helps me to kind of mentally process stuff, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's like the answer to the problem that I was trying to solve.
Right.
It's very, very strange. So and now kind of you set up GameChanger Labs, you grew WAG, you raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and now you're working on 2AM Ventures and Talent. It sounds like you could probably take some time off, go chill on a yacht for a little while, enjoy life. But what keeps you to like keep driving and keep building companies and keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I would say like, I definitely, not at the yacht life yet, but maybe the long weekend in Ibiza or something if I'm in London or something like that.
Nice.
But I for some reason, like I think it really goes back to like, I just love playing sports, and like it's something that like I just love doing, and I just can't see myself doing anything else. And I love, like right now in my life, WAG got really big, and it didn't, what I really missed was like the early stages of a startup, and like really working with a few people. And I mean, it got to a point where like I was, doing recruiting, and there's new hires, and I didn't even know who the new hires were. And it got really, really big, which is great. It's just that I really missed working with founders that are either at the pre-seed or seed stage level. So I've been able to like, that really motivates me, and I enjoy doing that. And I love seeing businesses go from like a couple people with an idea to really grow. And, or if you're like, out in the public and you see the product and you're like, oh my God, like, I was somewhat a part of this, or I helped this person. That's what really motivates me. And I think it's like a new chapter. I mean, obviously like your life is in chapters, but I feel like my experience through Silicon Valley and then starting WAG and going through the WAG experience has really led me to being able to work with early stage founders and providing a ton of value, and it's fun. And I found like my niche. I found like what I really like to do. And that's working with like early stage companies and whatnot. So I think that's just me. I just found that it motivates me and it makes me want to keep going. And like, my businesses now, like, I'm not sure what the future holds in terms of me building new businesses, but for right now, like I really enjoy investing in awesome, amazing founders. I love, recruiting for awesome, amazing founders, and that's kind of where I'm at now. And I'm not sure, like where the future, is going to be at, but that's kind of what my thoughts are.
Yeah, it's kind of like your purpose, or what you're passionate about. Kind of, it's always like an iterative sort of process, right? Like, and it changes as life goes on. Like, I always kind of think, people always really want to, find what, their calling is in life and all this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people see it as this, one sort of lightning bolt moment of like, oh, I was put on this earth to do this. And actually what you kind of just said is, in a way, it changes over time, and you have to kind of be aware of that and kind of adapt to it and be open to kind of changing what you're doing as you learn more about, yourself and go through life.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that you really grow, obviously, when like, when you go through change and stuff. But I would say like what the coolest part that what I've really come to realization is that like it's not really about when you start or where you end. It's really about the journey, and it's about like the experience that like you create. And like when you create your own business, or even when you join a startup, like you're on like a journey of a lifetime. Like you're like strapping yourself into a roller coaster, and you have no idea like where the end of this roller coaster is, or like if there's ups and downs, or if it's just down or all the way up. Like, but for me, like the journey and the experience, like that is like I just think that is it's an awesome opportunity to really grow as a person too, and really like figure out like what you like and what you don't like. That's why I like recommend, like people ask me, they're like, oh well, should I go join a company after college? And I'm like, if you don't know what you want to do in life, and like you want to be somewhat in business or something like that, I would say join a startup, because like you could be like a jack of all trades at an early stage startup and do a little bit of everything, and maybe you find out that you love to do design, or you love to do product, or whatever it is. So yeah, there's huge opportunities from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. What advice would you kind of give to, obviously you mentor a lot of companies as well, like what advice would you give to sort of maybe first time entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting a business, or setting something up? Like what's the most kind of common piece of advice that you find yourself dishing out?
I would say, like, kind of like to reiterate like what I said earlier, is like the hardest thing is like just taking that first step and like and doing it. And there's a lot of things in life where people are like, no, it's not the right time, I shouldn't do it. I think that like the advice that I would give is like if you don't try, you like will never know. And like the last thing you want to do is like be older and be like, I wish I did that, and I wish I did this. So I would say, like, if you are thinking about starting a business, like just go for it, and like just let it happen, and it will work out. And one thing that I really realized is that like if you work hard, if you like have positivity like in the world, you help people, you like are like you're super passionate about what you're doing, um, things will work out. Things may not work out, when you want them to work out, but if you have that mindset, it's almost like just like manifesting it. Like, be positive, network, don't be an asshole, like just keep pushing, and keep working super hard and work and collaborative, with people positively, I think that things will work out. And I think for me, one thing that has helped me is that like I didn't know if any of these companies were going to be successful. I still don't know if these companies are going to be like wildly successful, but you know, I at least want to give it a shot, and like I'm going to be positive about it, and like a lot of this stuff is out of my control, so just let it happen, and just have that mindset of like you got to keep pushing and you got to keep being positive. Things will work out.
Mm. How do you kind of keep that positive mindset when stuff is going really wrong? Like you said, joining a startup and founding a startup as well is definitely a roller coaster of emotions, and it's very easy to be really excited about everything when you're on a high. But like, I mean, did you have any sort of real like low lows during your time at WAG or GameChanger Labs? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's why I think like having a great team and whatnot is great when you go because you go through the lows together. You're not just the only person going through the low. Um, yeah, I would say that like for me, I have this theory, and I'm sure a lot of people also have this theory, but like I personally think everybody should create their own like imaginary board of directors where like you have specific people that you go for specific things. So for an example, my girlfriend's father is a real estate like genius, and whenever I have real estate questions, I go right to him. I don't go to anyone else. But I think over the years, I just created this like group of people where like if I am going through something, or if I need advice, or if I need, guidance, or if I need motivation, I'll go to people that I trust and that I really care about. And that has really helped me kind of either get me out of a mindset or really just kind of give me that extra push when things are low. But I mean, like when things are not going in your direction, I think that um, having people that may not be affiliated with your specific thing, you can fall back on, get advice, get guidance. But then also like, you're building a bond with your employees, you're building a bond with your co-founders, and that's why, you can fall back. Everyone's going to be going through the same thing at the same time. So just really trying to work together and trying to figure things out, I think is the best advice I could give. But yeah, I mean, like there's always lows. I'm confident that like, everybody in the world has lows, everybody has highs. I think it's just, surrounding yourself with people that can really help guide you during those times is super key.
Yeah, yeah, I like that idea of creating your own little advisory board. Um, I mean, it sounds like you almost kind of built yourself like a group of kind of mentors and advisors, and yeah, that's
I think that like there's like I think everybody in the world should have um not maybe necessarily mentors, but like people that they like trust and that they can like call, or they can go, have a coffee with and like talk about things. And, even, no matter where you're at in your life, I think that is super important because it gives you a different perspective on things. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I'll ask, my girlfriend or my mom about things that they have absolutely zero idea about, but I just want their perspective, and it actually can provide more clarity for me and whatnot. So yeah, totally recommend that strategy.
Yeah, I definitely sometimes you get kind of too close to a problem when you're looking at it by yourself, and you just need someone to be like, yeah, it's just have a fresh pair of eyes on it. I think as well, like what you're saying in a way is it's almost kind of like finding your tribe or finding your community as well. And like, I mean, how would you kind of recommend that people go about finding trusted people or finding a community of people that they can engage with and get support from?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, like, just in general, like, friends, family, people that you've, like, are continuously talking to, but, like, kind of go into a different direction. Like, I'm very passionate about building, like, your personal brand and building your network and things like that. And I think that everybody in the world, no matter where you're at, or what stage of a company you're at, or if you're starting a company, you should always be building your network and your personal brand. And I think over time you develop connections with people where you can fall back on. So, I'm someone that loves LinkedIn, and I love reaching out to like-minded founders and just anybody that I think that I could, help, or they could help me. I think that just over time, developing your network and building your personal brand, I think that you'll be able to meet a lot of awesome people that you can trust and whatnot to really help build that digital advisory board.
And how, in terms of kind of building your personal brand and network, how do you sort of go about reaching out to people? Like, I think a lot of people are maybe quite scared to just start randomly reaching out to people on LinkedIn, or maybe it's just because I'm really British. But I mean, how do you start building your network?
So like, I think of it as like, you want to first like understand like where are people that are going to benefit from your advice, your experience from the most. So if you're like say you're an up and coming actress or actor, I'd probably try to start building my network and my personal brand on like TikTok. Or if I was like maybe a fitness model, I'd be on Instagram or something. And if I had my own startup, I'd probably be on LinkedIn. I would say like a lot of people they are scared to reach out to people because they have never met that person, and it's awkward, and this, especially LinkedIn, it's like a professional setting. But I feel like if you can overcome that, and if you can just get yourself to send a couple connection requests with anything that is somewhat positive, where you can like help someone or they can help you, I think that you'll get a lot of like, ROI on that. And that's a great way to start building your personal brand, like taking that first step, like having the courage and like understanding like what you want to talk about. So like, for instance, the way that I kind of approach it is, especially on LinkedIn, is understanding like what your content strategy is, and have a voice. So like if you're a founder, like you're probably like having a wild journey going through your startup. So like talk about that and connect with people that may also be going through that. And those are some great like early ways to start building a personal brand.
And it's about kind of giving value to other people rather than, connecting people, asking, always asking for help from them.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that as well as like everybody has a story, everybody has gone on their own journey, no matter like where they are in life. I think social media, and I think platforms, especially like LinkedIn, is a great way to showcase that experience and showcase that journey and help other people that may be going through those experiences. And I think inherently you become a thought leader in that space, and people will want to organically network and reach out to you and stuff like that. And I think that everybody, I ignored that for like 6 years of my life, where like I was like, you know what, I'm not going to network, I don't want to meet people. And it really did hurt me because I didn't have the relationships, and it was just like I wasn't growing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And do you think that kind of helps you in your entrepreneurial journey as well, like building that network? I know you were kind of saying earlier that you had a slightly different journey into entrepreneurship than other people, and actually being able to build those relationships with people and build a network was something that kind of worked in your favor.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to build your network, because you are essentially planting all of these seeds, and like maybe they don't blossom right away, but they will blossom into some sort of positive, return in some degree. And I think that if you're starting a business, I mean, you should definitely be building your network, because you never know when you'll need to rely on your network, or whether if you're at, a crossroads, or maybe you're stuck on a problem in your network, could really help that out. Yeah, I think that a lot of people underestimate that. I think now is the time to build your personal brand, build your network, and keep growing as an individual. I can't tell you the amount of doors that have opened for me just by telling my story on LinkedIn for the last year. So I encourage everybody to continuously build their brand.
Yeah, I suppose, everyone's got value to give. You just have to be confident enough to go out and provide that value, and I think, and like pay it forward as well, because I think those things, it's kind of like karma in a way, but like I feel like it costs almost nothing to, I don't know, connect a couple of people together that you think might get along really well, or like pay it forward in some way, and actually you never know when that's going to actually come around and help you out later down the line.
Right.
So a couple of kind of final questions. If you were to kind of start over, so you're just coming out of university again, you've gone to California with your little suitcase, what would you do? What would you do differently now?
That's a tough question. No one's ever asked.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it went pretty well, so maybe you don't have to do anything different.
Honestly, like what I would do different is I would probably start from day one, like started building my network earlier in my career, and not just playing catch up. That would probably be, because like when I went to California, especially in Silicon Valley, like there's so many events, there's so many, I mean, every conversation you're in is like very tech driven. It's just a great place to meet people and to really like learn about new startups and new investors, and and I overlooked that. So I would probably if I could go back in time, I would probably say start really early building my network from day one, since I moved out there.
Nice. And what kind of content and books and podcasts, whatever, do you like to? What could you recommend?
Yeah, so I would say the book that I really that really motivated me, and that really, I think, changed who I am is it's called The Startup of You. So it's by Reid Hoffman, the gentleman that started LinkedIn. Just really talks about like how everybody, no matter what you do, where you are in the world, whatever the case may be, like everybody, your life is a startup, and you're always building your life, your startup. You're always growing. You're going through ups and downs. So I would say that book is probably my number one. I don't read as much as I probably should. I read a lot of tech blogs. So like that was one thing that I think actually, I did a LinkedIn post on this a long time ago, but I was obsessed with like continuously reading like TechCrunch and Business Insider, and like I would always go on Crunchbase and see like who got funding, what VCs raised funds, and like I was like this encyclopedia of like all things startup, and like it actually really helped me while talking to people and building my network and stuff like that. But I don't really read as much as I probably should. And then in terms of podcasts, I'm not like the biggest podcast listener. I would say that like I watch more like, it's kind of, I don't know if this is weird or not, but like I do a lot of like YouTube video. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Like I kind of go down like the rabbit hole of like watching all these different types of YouTube videos. And like I like to like watch like fireside chats and stuff like that of other entrepreneurs or investors, stuff like that. So yeah, I should listen to more podcasts. I don't. I feel like a lot of people, when they go running or when they drive, they listen to podcasts. For me, I'm just like, listening to like, 90s hip hop or something. So
yeah. Nice. I have, you know what, I never really used to be like, like I enjoy listening to podcasts, but I would never really like find the time. And now I have started listening to them while I go for, like, if I have to go for a long run, I'll do podcasts instead of music, because I find I switch off to music. Whereas if I've got a podcast, it kind of like keeps my mind active and not thinking about how much pain I'm in when I'm running. So that's now my kind of podcast time. I thought what you said there was quite interesting about how you used to read Crunchbase loads. But I think what's probably like valuable to learn out of that is that actually it's just knowing your stuff and like knowing your industry and knowing the environment that you're working in is probably really useful. So like whatever, industry or whatever you're working in, just knowing what's going on and being up to date is really valuable.
Yeah, so like so one thing that I like, I've already said this publicly before, but like when I was in Silicon Valley, like I like wanted to like meet, like if I was at like an event, or if I was talking to an investor or whatever the case may be, or even like a potential hire, just like the way that I like would talk would be like I would find information, or I would find key points that person would say, and then I would keep talking about that key point. So if somebody was like, oh, like I love the gig economy, like something would go off in my head, and I did, okay, well, I know all the gig economy companies. I can just have like a 25-minute conversation about gig economy companies, and eventually like you develop like a bond, and you like, then that's kind of how like I kind of went about it from that perspective, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would be like very relatable to people.
Yeah, well, you've got to, that's how you build connection. It's like, when there's like a really funny, I think it's like a Michael McIntyre like comedy sketch where he's just like, people do this when they realize that they live in the same place. And you'll be like, oh, where are you from? You'll be like, oh, I'm from London. And then the other person's like, oh, me too, like where in London? And you kind of narrow it down closer and closer. And the more you narrow it down, the more excited someone gets, because you've like got that in common. And just like that weird finding something in common just gets people so excited.
Like when people ask me, they're like, hey, Brendan, have you been to England? I'm like, yeah, I go to Skegness. And every single person's like,
oh yeah.
Everybody's like, oh my God, Skegness. Like, why would you go there? Every single person goes, why? And I was like, oh, it's a cool spot. It's more of a vacation spot. But yeah, exactly. Same concept.
I think my mum used to go there on holiday when she was like really little, back in whatever time that was.
Yeah,
that is so funny. Why? What were you doing in Skegness?
So it's I had a friend that I played soccer with in university, and he was from there.
Okay, nice.
Went over to Skegness. So it was cool vibes. I've only been to England once, so I'll have to spend more time there. I've actually, over the last like year and a half, I've actually made a ton of new connections and built my network somewhat in England. So I'll definitely have to make the trip over for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Come and see us in London.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time and insights. Yeah, I think that was really useful, and yeah, it was just really, really great to kind of talk to you and hear all those stories. So thank you very much for your time. Before I finish, tell everybody how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, I would say connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a message and whatnot on LinkedIn. That's predominantly the platform that I spend the most time on. And I try to respond to every person that reaches out to me. And so just Brendan Rogers on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find me.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please remember to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And also give us a rating or review if you can, so that you can help other people to find us. We also have some exciting news. You can now sign up to our weekly newsletter, where you'll receive additional content and invitations to our free online interactive workshops. To subscribe, just head over to our website, www.uprise.academy. That's uprise.academy, ACADEMY, and scroll to the bottom.